Over the years, the UFC has put on some big fights which have broken many records. However, there are some big fights out there which need to happen, but the chances of it happening are very slim. So here is 5 fights that may never happen. Number 5. The first time Luke Rockhold and Michael Bisping met was at UFC Fight Night 55, where Luke Rockhold won the fight by submission via a guillotine choke in the second round. Since that loss, Michael Bisping put together 3 solid wins and faced Luke Rockhold again, but this time it was for the world title. In the fight, Michael Bisping knocked out Luke Rockhold in the first round, becoming the new UFC middleweight champion of the world. Since that time, Luke Rockhold hasn't fought due to injuries, and Michael Bisping successfully defended his title against Dan Henderson at UFC 204 and will now face returning George St. Pierre later this year. Michael Bisping has said in interviews that he is planning to defeat George St. Pierre, and next said he will defend his title against the number 1 contender, and after that, he wants to hang up his gloves. With Luke Rockhold still on the sidelines, and with the middleweight division emerging with new contenders, I believe there is a slim chance of the trilogy fight happening. Number 4. A rematch between Werdum and Cain Velasquez was scheduled for the main event of UFC 196. In their first fight at UFC 188, Werdum submitted Cain Velasquez by a guillotine choke in the third round, winning the UFC heavyweight title. Leading up to UFC 196, Cain Velasquez pulled out of the fight due to suffering a back injury and was replaced with Stipe Miocic. Just a day later, Werdum also announced that he will be pulling out of the fight due to an injury. Both Johnny Hendricks and Stephen Thompson were promoted to the main event, and the card was changed into UFC Fight Night 82. Both Werdum and Cain Velasquez were scheduled to face each other again at UFC 207, where just a week before the fight, Cain Velasquez was removed from the event due to the Nevada State Athletic Commission saying that he's unfit to compete. Just recently, Cain Velasquez mentioned that he will only return to active competition once he is injury free, and recently Werdum has mentioned that he's not happy with the UFC and is unsure whether or not he will re-sign with the promotion once his contract is up. With Cain Velasquez on the sidelines and Werdum not happy with the UFC, I believe there is a very slim chance of this rematch happening anytime soon. Number 3. A matchup Jose Aldo has been campaigning for is a rematch with the current UFC lightweight champion Conor McGregor, who he lost his featherweight title to in just 13 seconds of the first round at UFC 194. Ever since that loss, he has defeated Frankie Edgar by a unanimous decision to become the interim UFC featherweight champion and later became the official champion. Jose Aldo has been chasing him for a rematch, but Conor McGregor doesn't seem very interested. Instead, he fought Nate Diaz twice and defeated then UFC lightweight champion Eddie Alvarez, becoming the first fighter ever to hold 2 belts simultaneously. Even recently, he wanted to fight either Khabib Nurmagomedov or Tony Ferguson for the interim UFC lightweight title at UFC 209 to solidify his chances at a rematch, but was unsuccessful in getting the fight. Now that Jose Aldo will be facing Max Holloway in a title unification bout at UFC 212, and with Conor McGregor closing in on a deal in a potential boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, I believe there is a very slim chance of this rematch happening anytime soon. Number 2. Holm shocked the world when she viciously knocked out Ronda Rousey at UFC 193, becoming the new UFC bantamweight champion of the world. Since Ronda Rousey's devastating loss, she completely disappeared from the MMA world. Holm was next choked unconscious by Miesha Tate at UFC 196 and had lost a unanimous decision to Valentina Shevchenko at UFC on Fox 20. When the UFC announced that Ronda Rousey will be making a comeback, the biggest fight to make at that time was the Holm rematch, but instead they booked Ronda Rousey to face the new UFC bantamweight champion Amanda Nunes at UFC 207, and Holm was booked to face Jermaine Durandamy for the vacant UFC featherweight title at UFC 208. Amanda Nunes brutalized Ronda Rousey on the feet, finishing her by TKO in the first round. At UFC 208, Jermaine Durandamy defeated Holm by a unanimous decision. Since that time, Ronda Rousey has removed herself from the MMA world again, and Holm may be dropping back down to the bantamweight division. I believe Ronda Rousey won't be coming back anytime soon, and I believe there's a very slim chance of this rematch happening. Number 1. Before Holm defeated Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg Justino was said to be the only fighter who had a chance to beat Ronda Rousey. In 2011, Chris Cyborg tested positive for steroids and was suspended for a year. Ronda Rousey had said in the past that if Chris Cyborg was able to make 135 pounds, she would fight her. She made accusations that Chris Cyborg was unable to make 135 pounds because of her steroid abuse. When Holm knocked out Ronda Rousey at UFC 193, Ronda Rousey removed herself from the MMA world. Since that time, Chris Cyborg made a long-awaited UFC debut, defeating Leslie Smith by TKO in a catchweight bout at UFC 198. She next brutalized Lena Landsberg, finishing her by TKO in the second round at UFC Fight Night 95. When the UFC announced that Ronda Rousey will be making a comeback, she was booked to face the new UFC bantamweight champion Amanda Nunes at UFC 207. Leading up to the fight, the UFC president Dana White said that if Ronda Rousey was able to win a title back, he would try his best to book a fight between Chris Cyborg and Ronda Rousey. At UFC 207, Amanda Nunes finished Ronda Rousey in the first round, retaining her title. Since that time, Ronda Rousey has removed herself from the MMA world once again, and Chris Cyborg may challenge the UFC featherweight champion Jermaine Durandamy. This fight has been long overdue, and I believe this super fight may never happen.